Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Building Your IT Career podcast. I'm Matt Moran. I provide advice, strategies, tools, and information you can use to create the most dynamic and rewarding career possible. Let's jump into episode 20. First, quickly in the news, I don't know if you saw this, but Instagram has reached 400 million users and is beating Twitter on traffic. So advertisers are jumping on that. I've said for a while, and I like Twitter for some things. You have to be really careful about building a careful list, but otherwise it's just an ongoing barrage of updates that tend to be updates from people marketing Twitter marketing services. I said it's kind of incestuous or a little bit self-serving in that regard, and it's difficult for the average person to connect with. So finding information on there that's useful is a challenge at best. The other thing is, and this is just a very real assessment on what we've seen in traffic to the site, we get a lot more traffic on visual images from something like Facebook or a video on Facebook than we do on Twitter. We might get a lot of retweets on Twitter and certainly favorites on Twitter for something we post, but it doesn't translate to people actually following the link. And that's an interesting phenomenon. That's something I'm sure that businesses are discovering. They're just saying, hey, even if 20 people, 30 people favorite what we say, a very small fraction of those people actually make it over to our site to take a look at our content. So that's critical for people to understand, and that's probably driving in part Twitter, a general kind of disenfranchised population that's looking at Twitter or moving away from Twitter. And then for the average consumer, once again, images of their friends are much more appealing than a text update from their friends. And Twitter just doesn't have that graphical interface that Instagram does. So I wonder what your thoughts are on that. Do you spend more time on Twitter, more time on Instagram, Facebook? Certainly feel free to let me know. So where have I been? I haven't posted a podcast in almost a month. I did a few blog entries and I alluded to this, and so I'm going to share with you, and this will be the bulk of the podcast really, because it's really had a profound impact on me as I reflect on this. But on September 5th of this month, my mother passed away after a short and very aggressive battle with cancer. She was diagnosed on July 21st after kind of being misdiagnosed for a while, which is actually interesting. There's a news story saying that the majority of people will be misdiagnosed as their health fails in some way, shape, or form. And I don't know whether or not that's because doctors aren't putting in the effort, or it's just the fact that medicine is still challenging at best. There's a lot of things that can present as an illness of one type, and it's really something else. My mom had been really losing weight for some time, and they were really treating this as acid reflux, treating it with antacids, which doesn't really help with cancer. I wrote a little bit about that before she passed away. I have a link to a blog entry called Enjoy Every Sandwich, and if you're wondering about that reference, that is something that Warren Zevon, the songwriter, had said to David Letterman on the David Letterman show. He was diagnosed and being treated and would eventually die from lung cancer, which is what they suspect that my mom had as well. She was not a smoker. She had smoked in her past, but it had been almost 50 years since she had smoked. So Warren Zevon was asked what he had learned about life, or as he reflected on life, with his diagnosis, and he said just that we should enjoy every sandwich. So if you want to check out that article, I talk a little bit about how my mom impacted me. She really played a huge part in my life, much more so than my father did. And I wrote a little bit about my father as well under a blog entry called Thanks Dad, so I have a link to that as well if you want to understand kind of where I came from. And it really plays into how I've utilized technology, how I grew my technology career, and largely the advice I give to people about going out and doing something. So I talk a lot about my father always saying, do something most people don't. And I always tell people in IT careers, you don't have to wait for your degree. You don't have to wait till you take a class. Go learn to program, download something. You've got Google, you've got these tools. Back when I learned to program, the internet wasn't there. There were bulletin boards you could log into. And I was reading a book called Basic Apple Basic. A friend of mine was taking a class, and I simply picked up the book. He showed me something he had done. He walked away from the computer. I picked up the book, started programming, and eventually built a library database to keep track of my books. And that's really what prompted me to start my career in technology. It's largely accidental in that regard. I never thought I'd be doing it as a career. The reason I believe I undertook that is something in my psyche just said, you just go off and do things. And I saw that represented in my parents' life. And so my mom was somebody who actively was engaged in life. She was 84 years old, and even while she was struggling with her disease, not yet diagnosed, she was still out there playing tennis. And after a hip replacement, she was out there playing 2 hours of tennis several times a week. And she just kept mentioning that she felt more tired than she normally did, but she was still out there doing it. And, I think a lot can be said about that. She never really complained. As a matter of fact, she really impacted me on the way that you go out and pursue life. Not just that she'd be out there playing tennis several times a week, didn't really watch TV, didn't really, she read voraciously. And so all of those things impacted us. I was largely raised with her and around her friends, and it's kind of what formed my respect and adoration of women. It taught me to go after life and the arts, and encouraged me to be actively engaged in life and the living. And her humor was amazing. So she was often sarcastic, but in just a funny way, a self-deprecating humor that has colored my life for my 50 years. And as a matter of fact, when she was actually diagnosed with she had the cancer diagnosis, the doctor came and told her what was going on. Now, my mom had been an intensive care nurse for 30 years. She certainly knew the medicine behind what they were talking about. And the doctor gave her the diagnosis, a mediastinal growth. That's a growth in your chest, kind of above your lungs where your heart is. And it's pretty much a kiss of death, as it were. There's not a whole lot they can do once it's at that point. And it had metastasized and was in her brain and elsewhere. And so she got the diagnosis, and she knew exactly what that meant. And she kind of sighed, and the doctor said, "Is there anything else I can do for you?" And true to form, my mom's response was, "Well, maybe you can get me a better doctor with a different diagnosis." And that caused everybody to laugh, and that's kind of my mom's nature. She was not going to be a bother. She never complained about what was going on. She did mention to me at a particularly sensitive moment, she said she was sad. She said she was sorry that she was being a burden, which I, just told her, of course, I wanted to be there to take care of her. But she was sad that, she had more to do. She wanted to live more and wanted to play more tennis, and that colored much of her life. As a matter of fact, she passed away halfway through the U.S. Open, and I had several dreams and have had several since then. But during that week, just watching those matches, I used to always call her, or I'd watch them with her, and I'd always call her and say, "Mom, did you see the Federer match? Or did you see the Serena Williams play? Or, that was amazing," or whatever it was. So it was something we can connect on, and that's one of the things I think I'm going to miss the most. I would go off and play tennis with my mom and her friends, and I really feel like I'm missing one of my closest friends, one of the people I really enjoyed being around. She was a great person. Last night we had a little service for her at the church, and several of her friends came to me and just said they were so sad that she was an amazing person and had impacted him with her, or impacted them with her kindness and always thoughtfulness and her humor, and they just all kind of talked about the same things. And that's true. I can honestly say that in 50 years, I don't think I ever heard of or saw my mom in conflict with any of her friends or complain about them. And she was just even keel, funny, dealt with things with humor, was actively engaged in getting friends together. So many people came to us and said, "We just remember coming to your house for Thanksgiving and come to your house for this event, and it was something we always looked forward to, and we'll always remember how much your mom was just a part of our lives." So it's very encouraging to see. That's part of the reason I haven't been posting. We've just been kind of dealing with the family issues, and really I haven't processed all of that. As a matter of fact, I'm going to write a tribute to my mom. I'm not ready to do that yet. I'm still going through the process of understanding what it means for her not to be here. But if you feel so inclined, you could check out the links I put to Enjoy Every Sandwich about my mom. And you can also see what I wrote about my dad, Thanks Dad, which is another link. He passed away last year, so now I'm left without either of my parents. And I think I'm at that age. A lot of the friends I went to school with are dealing with that. Of course, our parents are older. And that's kind of the nature of life. What has it meant to my refocus? So last time I talked about refocusing your career, and this is perhaps the most critical message I can give to people is it has done a couple things for me. One is I don't want to wait any longer to continue my development as a creative individual. And so I'm launching a new video cast that'll be on my personal site, and it's going to be centered on the idea of throw away the box, which is a presentation I give. And it was prompted through a presentation I was giving in Phoenix a few years ago called Lessons on Life and Business from a Hyperactive Child, where I talk about my third child and I talk about my other children, some anecdotes, and also personal experiences. And during that presentation, a woman had asked me, Matt, what is it that your parents did and what is it that you were doing with your kids that help you guys think so far outside the box? And I had thought about it for a moment, and I answered, no one ever told me there was a box. And if there's one thing I could say about my mom, and really my dad as well, is that they never put limits on, oh, you need to think of this, or you need to go to school to get this, or you need to pursue, what do you want to do with your life? That wasn't ever their question. Their question, or their admonishment, was always to do something, to get knowledge, to continue to learn, to always be engaged in life. And you could change direction at any moment. My father did several times professionally. Just the experience of watching that and being able to pursue whatever you wanted. So it's really, with my mom's passing, I've said, I didn't accomplish some of the things I had hoped to accomplish. And I'm a pretty harsh critic of my production. Some people would say, man, you've been published and you get out there and perform and you speak and you do all these things. But you know what? There's more that I want to do. And if I am taking one thing from this, it's that it's kind of that cliche. We don't have any guarantee to the time we had. I thought I'd be playing tennis with her for another 7, 8 years, 10 years. I don't know. Maybe that's unrealistic because she was 84 years old, but she has friends out there that are 90 that are hitting the tennis ball. So the mindset of these ladies that so dramatically impacted me, including my mom, is that, I kind of felt they were going to be around doing this stuff, but certainly we don't know. And so I'm taking it as a personal challenge or encouragement, a kick in the ass, as it were, to go out and be in a more creative mode. And what I've done to make that happen is I've turned social off on my phone. For the most part, I don't log into Facebook. I don't log into Messenger. I am unavailable because I have a limited amount of time to create things. And I'll go online, I'll check things in the morning on my PC, or I'll post things, I'll engage a little bit, and then I will be offline. As a matter of fact, when I'm working developing software, I've talked about this before, but I've really taken it to a new level. I'll take my phone and I'll put it in airplane mode. Nobody needs to reach me. I am in creative mode, or I am in creation mode. Either way. So that's the admonishment I've taken out of that. It's both going to show itself in software development. I'm actually working with my son and a couple other partners on a piece of software. We think it's a revolutionary piece of software. It needs to be developed. So that's one thing I'm working on. We're going to be doing more music, like I say, the video cast, and also my consulting writing project. This was on the works ages ago. You can see I've written about it in my blog in the past. I had been signed to a contract with my publisher to do a series of videos and to write a script for a series of videos on building a consulting business. So that's back on the table. I have a goal next year to start my novel, and it's put off till next year because I'm being realistic. I've allocated my time appropriately to accomplish things, and part of that means I won't be engaged online quite as much because it kills your creative time. We have a limited amount of time. So once again, that's kind of what I've taken from it. Now, I just really wanted to cover that in the podcast. I'm not giving some deep lesson, although I think there are some lessons you can take from that. But I wanted to let you know where I had been and why I had not posted in the last month. I would certainly encourage you, go check out the article, Enjoy Every Sandwich, learn a little bit about my mom, and hopefully from that you can take something from it. And if nothing else, think about that with your own family and about the time you have allocated to you and about the things you want to accomplish. Are you doing something? Are you moving those things forward? It's not enough to talk about them. It's only enough to actually do them. And that's the one thing that both my parents put top, front and center, is that action is the critical factor. That's the thing you need to be undertaking, is the action to get things done. So I'm going to leave you with that encouragement. If you have any comments, you can certainly leave them on the blog. You can give me an audio comment. Would love to hear from you. And I appreciate you taking the time to listen to my podcast here. And certainly give me any insight, things you'd like me to cover, additional information. We're going to do a whole series on building a consulting business, kind of a precursor to the video series that I'll be doing with my publisher. So once again, thank you for listening to the Building Your IT Career podcast. I'm Matt Moran.